Roll call.
Chairman Mills.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Rios.
Here.
Mayor Cole. Here. Mr. Hutt.
Here. Any citizens to be heard? What's that? Got a motion to minutes.
There needs to be a correction.
All right.
Yes, sir. On presentation of ACPEDC, here it says, Osteen shared what it means in the economic policy that the county recently adopted, which is the development with more than 50 units that is available for rent below market value. It should be 51% of the total, because what we're talking about is section 42, the housing program, and we're not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not looking at economic development of 50 units or more, low income only.
I believe that's an accurate statement from Ms. Osteen from the recording. And the county policy does have a minimum of 50 units in there.
So it's not, you're telling me the county policy says that y'all are pursuing housing projects that are,
No, the policy states that if someone wants to submit something to the county, we consider that it be a minimum of 50 units.
50 units.
Minutes is presented.
Second.
Second, Commissioner. Oh. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. All right, we do it. Presentation.
Thank you, Judge. This is the, if you bring that up, this is the January, February, and March activities report of your Francis County Partnership EDC. All right, and so again, January, February, and March of this year, the EDC retained me as their interim until the end of this June, about 2 months away. We have the new website added, commercial sites and buildings via some specific software that was presented. And we did the fourth quarter activity report separately to the to Aransas County, the city of Rockport, as well as the town of Fulton. The EDC held their annual meeting on January 27th with 90 attendees. We had presentations on broadband, the Workforce Development Center coming. Actually, the website was launched that afternoon from Persona Marketing, and the actual work plan I presented from 2022 to 2025. I helped take the minutes at your last LGC meeting here. You elected officers and a budget was approved, and went to the Rockport City Council meeting on February 8th and the 22nd, talking about economic development policies. We also added some interactive demographics to the new website from another vendor, Local Intel. Commissioners Court adopted the incentive policies back on February the 14th. We assisted a local manufacturer with expansion plans. I attended the Texas Economic Development Council Winter Conference in Sugar Land, as well as 2 broadband task force meetings that represented Hunter's office in Corpus, and Hunter named me the co-chair with him for the Coastal Bend effort. The EDC staff also assisted several businesses with their needs. The EDC kicked off a membership drive in late February. It ended last Friday so that we can have more marketing funds for the rest of this calendar year. We participated in the City of Rockport's council meeting on the 22nd and March 8th on incentive policies, and held a board planning retreat on March 1. I spoke to the local Rotary Club on February the 3rd. We were represented, thank you, Colin, at the Governor's Broadband Task Force meeting, actually run by Comptroller Hager on March 7th in Victoria. And we met with the general contractor for a new restaurant and a marina coming That was back on March the 16th. Of course, the big news of the quarter was the big ribbon cutting out at Rockport Terminals. If you haven't been there, I suggest you drive by. It's quite a development. You can see there that's the photo taken between two rail spurs there. They got quite an operation. This is the largest privately owned multimodal port on the Texas Gulf Coast. So it's quite a development for Aransas County. If you haven't been to the new website, aransascountyedc.org, I suggest you do so. It's very interactive. You can pull up various logistics, accessibility, as well as demographics. So we're real proud of it. Carl did a great job with that. And with that, Judge, we'd be happy to answer any questions and leave us some action items.
Any questions?
You said you helped the business with expansion.
They had some questions on how they could expand their business, yes.
Okay. And you talked about you spoke with a company, something about a marina. Would that be on Navigation District property?
I can't really say. It's confidential.
Okay. When you spoke with Rockport Terminals, are y'all assisting them in any way?
Well, I think we've assisted them quite a bit through their development phase. They have not sought out any incentives that I'm aware of.
Right.
They're up and running, and they've been very complimentary of the networking advantages that they've received by being a member of the EDC.
Have they reached out to you about their appraised value? You know that they have supposedly one of the highest appraisal values in the state of Texas for commercial property. And I believe they've actually taken the appraisal district to court over the amount. Is that something that y'all would be interested in doing, working with businesses?
We have not been asked by them to, or made aware of that at all, so no.
That's all I have to say. But it looks like y'all did a lot of meetings and went to a lot of things, and so for the last quarter.
Yeah, I'd say, Mr. Hunt, that the EDC here is putting their infrastructure in place.
Right.
And we've made a lot of progress on that.
Right.
The job is posted, which will be in the next quarter's report. And so hopefully by the end of June, they'll have the new CEO on board.
Yes, sir. But y'all been at this for 3 years, and you've gone through a whole quarter, and there was no real actionable items. Besides, you told us that you helped the business expand, or you answered questions, and then you talked to Marina, but you can't tell us why. This website, early on, you talked about fulfilling a one-stop shop. I don't know if you work here or if you read the minutes. And is this website supposed to fulfill that obligation of creating a one-stop shop?
Well, in some ways it does. About 87% of the site searches in the nation are done online. You don't even know you're being searched as a community. So if you don't have a robust website, you're not in the game. And so we were not in the game with this website that we had. And so now that we've got some more private funds, we were able to do that. And so again, we're putting the infrastructure in place. We're learning. We had to walk before we run.
Right.
And so we're learning to walk pretty fast.
Is there any movement on this idea of the one-stop shop?
Well, I think it's already there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already there. The whole idea, premise behind that in most communities is that a company does not have to go to several different places to get information. They could, now that the city and the county have adopted policies, they can come to the EDC, we can hand them the paperwork, say, hey, here's the information, and here's the process.
Okay.
We have a website that directs them with all the information, questions, answers to their questions.
So you guys are the one-stop shop is what you're telling me?
For recruiting and marketing. But there's a point there now that these policies are adopted. And if if someone were to fill out paperwork, then that goes to the city or it goes to the county.
Right, I'm okay with that. I understand that. I'm just trying to see what your role is. Do you play a role?
Think of it kind of like a funnel,
Yes, sir.
and they're funneling in, and the whole goal of economic development is to make it to the end and not to be eliminated. So you want to provide as much information as you can through the process to keep them interested in your community until they can make a decision.
In the workforce training aspect of it, is the work, so y'all, is the EDC overseeing the workforce training center? No, y'all not. So you were just, the EDC was the ones who helped like facilitate the grants and getting it approved and that, and now y'all step back?
I would say they're very much a full partner and a catalyst and remains so until it gets open. And then even after that, we'll be a liaison to local businesses to make sure that that center is teaching what it needs to teach. And it's kind of an ombudsman between employers and the center.
Yes, I hope so. But you won't have, the EDC is not going to have any like management over the facility itself. The facility is going to be managed solely by Del Mar. Okay. All right. Sure. That's all questions. Appreciate it.
Okay, there's no action to be taken on that, so,
Yeah, there's just to accept the report.
oh, accept the report, I'm sorry.
Now, I'll make a motion to accept the 20 ACP EDC 2022 first quarter report.
Thanks, Mayor Cole. All those in favor? Nothing. Okay. Item number 2, discuss, deliberate, and take the following possible actions concerning the future utilization of the Aransas County Alliance Local Government Corporation in view of the adoption of economic development policies by both Aransas County and the city of Rockport.
I would like to talk about this a little bit. When we first looked at starting an EDC, we were looking at every avenue that we could take. And it was recommended by legal counsel that we look at putting together an LGC in combination with that. I think the thinking back then is we were going to have a chance of getting a land donation, which the EDC could not accept, but the LGC could accept. And then we turn that over, along with other grants and things like that. As the EDC has grown so much through private membership, the function of the LGC is becoming more diluted. It's another layer of government that I don't believe. Therefore, I think it's bigger and it's not very time consuming. We don't put a lot of time into it, but I think it's more of a hindrance at this point. Happy to discuss. That's my opinion on it. But I would think that we could maybe, in addition with the city and the county adopting their own economic incentive policies.
EDC needs to deal with them.
Exactly. I think the EDC would contract directly with either entity or both, depending on the subject matter.
Is this your agenda item, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just curious.
And we've been talking about this for quite a while, for months and months. And I think that
It was we.
council, we talked, city manager and I talked about it. I talked to members of the EDC. And I think that, again, it's another layer of government we necessarily don't need. I would like to see it either sunsetted or suspended or eliminated. I'm willing to discuss.
I've asked, if I may, Mrs. Rousseau, has this been discussed with you and the Commissioners Court at all? The idea?
I'll discuss this at the Commissioners Court.
I asked Councilwoman Jackson if this was discussed with your, and she said, no, it had not been discussed.
We can't.
No, but this is my, I know.
Excuse me, we can't discuss it with
But I'm not saying, sir, I have the
We
floor.
have the floor.
I have the floor. No, I understand. But what I'm saying is, that I have not had the time to discuss this with any of my commissioners. And Commissioner Moore walked in at a good time. And the reason I say this is the first time you heard about, we're actually, to catch you up to speed, sir, we're on agenda item 3 here, and it's the one that says, we're talking about terminating the contract agreement with the between the LGC and the EDC. And I'm going to ask for it to be tabled and for this meeting, we can deliberate at the table, because I haven't got the opportunity to discuss this with my commissioners. I know y'all haven't got the opportunity to discuss this with your colleagues. And this was, let's admit it, the creation of the LGC and the creation of the EDC was a long time, and y'all pushed it, and we had a lot of meetings on it, and we talked about it. I do not have an opinion on this, but I do not feel comfortable for any of us, myself particularly, voting on it today without having some background documents, without having, I assume Mr. Bell here is to speak to us to answer any questions. The navigation district commissioners would need to be able to have that and vote on it before I can make a decision. But yes, sir, go ahead, you have the floor.
Mr. Bell, would you like to chime in here and give us your? You're muted.
The proposed transaction that folks have talked to me about is the original interlocal agreement provided that it would be expiring at the end of this year anyway. And so this year we need to revisit what the plans are for the LGC and the relationship with the EDC. And as has been mentioned, since both the city and the county have adopted economic development policies and things are working, we really don't need this extra layer of government in the process. The LGC can be valuable in the future if you have some particular project that needs land or needs the issuance of bonds that would be best handled by something separate from the city or the county. And so it does have some statutory benefits, can be kept around. But so far as being stuck in between the governmental entities and the EDC, that model, at least from the EDC's perspective, we'd have a little better accountability, better relationships with the governmental entities, just dealing with them directly. But the issue needs to be discussed and brought up to address how you'd like to go forward, because this is the last year of the 3-year interlocal agreement between the county, the city, and the navigation district on forming the local government corporation.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend this to, at least on item A, that we discuss and deliberate and that we take action at the next meeting after we've been able to discuss this with our entities that we represent.
Motion made, do I have a second? Lack of a second, guys.
Mayor Judge, as a point of clarification, Mr. Bell, you said the interlocal is expiring. As I read the bylaws, the LGC continues to exist unless and until every one of the subscribing entities vote to amend it or to dissolve the corporation. Isn't that correct? Takes a unanimous vote of each of the subscribing entities according to the bylaws.
Yes, that's correct. Keep in mind that an LGC can exist with just one governmental entity supporting it. It was actually quite unusual for 3 governmental entities to join and do this one together, and that's a great thing. But for the LGC to cease existence, all 3 would have to back out of the transaction. But the interlocal agreement that provided the structure of the 3 together expires this December.
Sir, can you explain to me why the LGC was created or needed to begin with?
This development plan actually was not put together by myself, but by some consultants that were working with the city after Hurricane Harvey. And as I understood it, the LGC provided a vehicle for the three entities to get together and provide coordination between the two. That would be between the three. That would be one advantage. Another advantage.
Sorry, part of the information. There's actually 4 entities involved. Yes,
Pardon,
sir.
didn't want to leave out the town of Fulton. Yes, the 4.
Oh, I thought it was the navigation district.
And the navigation district. Yes. It allowed them to work together. It also can receive donations of property and money. And one thought was that persons who might not want to donate directly to the EDC might want to provide funding to the local government corporation. And that would be deductible is a donation to like a nonprofit foundation or another governmental entity for IRS purposes. I don't think anything has come of that last element, but the EDC can advise you if y'all have received any additional money in the last 3 years. The other issue that came up though as we started was concerned by all 4 entities that this LGC would somehow supplant the authority of the different individual entities. And we assured all 4 entities at the beginning that no, that wasn't the intention of the LGC. It was just supposed to help coordinate the activities. But as I understand at this point, that level of coordination is not really needed since the governments have set up their own economic development policies and could deal with it directly. But it's your call whether you want this additional layer inserted in things. But
Sir,
yes.
why wouldn't an organization or an individual just donate money directly to the EDC instead of donating it to the LGC?
C6. Can't see that.
Well, donors can make their own decisions as to where they want to provide money. The EDC is the entity directly doing the work, doing the economic development activities, providing that service under contract to the LGC. So most donors tend to want to provide the money directly where it's being used and where the work is being done.
So I guess my question is why, it seems to me that if they wanted to donate money, they would just donate money directly to the EDC and they wouldn't need to donate it to the LGC and us donate it to the EDC. I don't understand why that step exists.
Oh, that distinction is one in IRS, the federal tax laws, and that the EDC is an organization exempt under section 501c6. It's not, businesses can make contributions to the EDC. It's considered a deductible business expense for most businesses. Individuals, on the other hand, would be looking for like a 501c3 deduction under 170C of the Internal Revenue Code. The EDC cannot receive those type of donations, but the LGC could. And so that's the distinction, is the donor might want to take a tax deduction for the donation. And
so we as the LGC being a C3,
the LGC is actually a unit of local government.
Okay, sorry, we as a unit of local government can knowingly take money from somebody tax deductible, knowing that we're going to give it to a C6?
You can use the money for any governmental purpose that you see. And under section 170C of the Internal Revenue Code, donations to a local government are excludable from federal income tax purposes on the same basis as like a 501c or other charitable donation. What the government decides to do with the funds, whether it's build a swimming pool or do economic development work and expanding the tax base and whatnot, is something that the government can decide to do. And so that's within your purview.
Okay. Can I ask, I mean, this is, was anybody like to ask questions?
Or stick to the agenda. So A is idea to terminate the Economic Development Services Agreement with the Aransas County Partnership Economic Development Corporation, the EDC, effective as of December 31st, 2022, so that the EDC make contract with participating entities directly.
So this is open for discussion now, right?
It's moved and seconded. Motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, right?
Yes.
Right. Now discussion.
Would anybody from, would anybody from the, here like to ask a question? No. No.
I did just sign up, but if I might ask a question, just to
Yes.
clarify what I heard. So the agreement, the services agreement with EDC is set to expire at the end of this year, correct? Unless it's otherwise determined. So all you're saying is we're going to let that happen. You're not at this point dissolving the LGC. Thank you.
I like it. How long has this agreement been going on for? We're in our third year.
Correct.
And it was all about economic incentives and creating an economic incentive policy. No, because I guess what I'm asking is that as for the navigation district, these 3 years, we signed on to the LGC. We worked with the EDs, we worked with the EDC. But the EDC went out for a competing grant against the navigation district, which was the Marina project. Is that correct, Mr. Moore?
It's what it does.
That we went out for the same group of funds, the EDC or the county and the navigation district.
Let me see if I can answer your question.
Yes, sir.
The purpose, if you read the bylaws of the LGC, the purpose of this LGC is to encourage, stimulate, and promote economic development, expansion, and diversification within the Rockport, Fulton, and Aransas County, Texas area, and to lessen the burdens of government by creating a larger tax base for the benefit of all residents of the area. Then the corporation, the LGC, has the authority to contract with a nonprofit or
Correct.
like
Yes, sir.
CDC to
I agree with
carry
you
out those
100%.
purposes.
Yes, sir.
That's the agreement that we have in
Yes, sir.
general.
Yes, sir. But I'm talking
There's
about.
various strategies to carry out that purpose. Now, that's the consulting agreement that expires.
Yes, sir.
That consulting agreement expires at the end of this year. So the economic development policies were passed by the city of Rockport and Aransas County. There's no mention in the policies about running those incentives through the LGC. It removed that layer of government.
Yes, actually,
LGC has no authority to do that, though. The LGC cannot enter into tax abatement issues.
It's an extra layer.
I really just wanted to add, because I am reading from the bylaws, it says that the corporation, the LGC, helps the community speak with one voice to do all of the things that you are expressing. And it seems to me the nub of the issue here is whether or not the LGC is speaking with one voice, should continue to speak with one voice, and whether that voice should be directing the EDC to do what the LGC wants to do, or whether the EDC should be operating independently and then coming to individual subscribing entities.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for increased transparency and accountability by going directly to each governmental entity, because things that Aransas County needs to see happen in economic development could be different than what the city of Rockport or the Navigation District or the town of Fulton need to see happen. So we've got a one-size-fits-all agreement right now. It's very hard to be customized with that as we get more nuanced and sophisticated.
Sir,
Except that seems to have been the purpose of the LGC,
yes, sir.
was not to have all of those individual stovepipes, but to have a single place, subject to Open Meetings Act, where people can come and discuss and hear what's going on publicly, and have y'all go to y'all representatives, go to your subscribing entities and develop consensus and unanimity on what the area does as a whole.
Mr. Meek, I apologize. I feel almost as if you've been put in a kind of like a situation here, because you came into this process. I know you were at the beginning and you came in at the process not so long ago, but there was a whole middle period where the LGC, where the EDC, the early days of the EDC, which was Mr. Jackson, Mr. Jatine, and Ms. Bouts, came and they presented the reason we needed to have the EDC work with the LGC is because you didn't want different entities competing against each other. You wanted one place that came where we spoke with one voice, where the different entities sat down together and they decided what economic development was going to be for the community, because it was all about speaking with one voice. And that the LGC and the EDC were going to work to accomplish these goals. And Councilman Gertner used an example like this, that we're going to work together to do this, to accomplish these goals. One-stop shop, it included workforce training, it included workforce housing, it included a place where the different government entities could come together and discuss things. So that's what was conveyed to our different entities. That's what I believe was conveyed at the meetings to the entity I represent. So now you're telling me that the reason we got into this, to have some uniformity and all of these things, that's bad, and we're more sophisticated now and we need to get out.
No, I would say that setup was post-Harvey, and you're not in that situation today. Things on the ground are different. And I think my experience with economic development around the state is that this model is very unusual.
Do you know how many
still have I'd say I can't even count on one hand how many have this model. So there's a way to get transparency and accountability, and buy-in, and speak with one voice without having this type of system. It's done every day.
I can't go, yes, sir.
Is it the usual model for the county to use tax in order to support economic development and then work with an economic development group that is directly accountable to just the county? Because it's a county tax.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Usually the city then and navigation district or little towns won't have any say.
Oh, not at
It'll just
all.
be the
No,
county through the county tax, right?
If you've seen one model, you've seen one model. It depends on the size of the city in that county. Usually if it's a large city that dominates the county, then most of the efforts will happen there. So it's just different. You need to use what works best for your community.
so what we thought when we joined was that we were promised metrics on like being able to judge y'all's performance. And we were also promised the ability to direct where you guys go out and what you set your priorities. But through none of the 3 years of the agreement were we ever given any metrics to show how far y'all came in accomplishing what y'all said you were going to accomplish. And neither did we get any input in the decision-making or where we should go. And it's interesting because, I mean, you mentioned like that you're working with an establishment who's looking at putting in a marina. And this is something that you would think that the navigation district this is the reason we contract you out with you, so we would find out this information.
It is. So when you get to that point with a company, it's their call on whether or not they want that involvement. It's not the EDC's call or anyone else's call. This is very preliminary with that company right now. They'll seek their own permitting and their own needs. They probably have to permit the restaurant with the city. If they have to permit something with the navigation district, they will. But we have not been asked to go represent them to anyone at this point.
I understand, but I mean, Rockport's a small town. I mean, you break wind and the person across town knows. I mean, you haven't even, I mean, there's been no communication that I know with the navigation district, even about the availability of, say, things open in the harbors, in the marinas. I'm asking if we're going to terminate this contract, because it looks like everybody's decided they want to terminate this contract because nobody wants to do this anymore. What did the navigation district get out of it?
That's for y'all to determine. I've been here since January. We're giving quarterly reports. We've just basically gotten into this calendar year.
Right.
And so the EDC will determine in the future how they want to go about going to each individual entity, if that's what they want to do.
So we got.
Right now, let me just state
Thank you.
this, look at the financing of the EDC. It's primarily private sector, about 80-20. And so this is a good value for every taxpayer in Aransas County, Fulton, Rockport, Navigation District. And but there are ways to increase accountability and be more transparent by going directly and having a customized agreement with that.
Yes, sir, I understand. But this is settling and it says, in view of the adoption of economic development policies by both the Aransas County and the city of Rockport, those are tax incentive policies, correct? When you look at the three before where the last sentence says, in view of the adoption of economic development policies by both Aransas County and the city of Rockport. Correct. Okay, so in none of the lead up to any of the creation of the LGC, the creation of the EDC, was anybody ever told or really discussed about tax incentives? That was not one of the issues for creating the LGC.
I'd like to move the public question.
Okay. Move to call the question. All those in favor,
Point of information, what does that mean?
means he made the motion and seconded it.
He wants to end deliberation.
Right.
All right, that's fine.
Was made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, so that's what I get.
So I'm against, yes, sir.
Maintain the Aransas County Alliance Local Government Corporation on ongoing basis with annual meetings necessary to keep the LGC available for special projects that can utilize statutory time.
If I may. Section 3.2 of the bylaws, it says regular meetings. And it says regular meetings of the board of directors shall be held at least quarterly as shall be designated from time to time by resolution of the board of directors. So through the bylaws, we're required to have quarterly meetings. So if you want to not have quarterly meetings, it means that we would need to go to the different entities, and the different entities would need to vote for a change in the bylaws, and then we would all have to vote.
Mr. Bell, can you have input on this?
If the board elects to go through with this process of winding down the operations with the LGC, well, there are several things we'll have to do. One is revise the bylaws, but I would recommend that we do that once we determine if all three entities want to renew the interlocal agreement or some basis for continuing the LGC. This is one of the factors that we'll have to address as we go forward.
Right, but today we're just discussing to change to have an annual meeting as opposed to quarterly meetings. And if I may, section 8.2, it says amends the bylaws. These bylaws may be altered, amended, or repealed, and new laws may be adopted by action of the directors of all the sponsoring entities and the directors.
So for example, if this board votes to proceed with going toward an annual meeting, the next step will be going to the sponsoring entities to obtain their concurrence with that. And as I was mentioning previously, part of that process, I think, is going to involve looking at the whole structure of the organization, whether they want to renew the interlocal agreement this year or do something else. I mean, this is the year those decisions need to be made. So this is going to be one of the things in those presentations.
Sir, if I may ask, this agenda item says, it talks about the LGC. Everything.
His or ours?
I'm not sure if there was a question. Regrettably, your audio and your video cut out. I'm not picking up anything here. There we go.
Are we, if I may, are you retained by us by chance, or are you just here as a private citizen?
I represent the EDC, and I was asked to be available for this meeting because I was involved in the original organization of the entities.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I appreciate it, because I was just wondering. Here it says that you, it says that on B, the agenda item on for right now, the subsection says maintain the Aransas County Alliance Local Government Corporation on an ongoing basis with annual meetings. But it also says at the end, it talks about its statutory powers.
Yes.
See that?
Well, the LGC has the authority to own property, lease property, issue bonds that would be tax exempt for many purposes under the Internal Revenue Code, and do a variety of things that assist in the economic development process. It's hard to project at this time if somebody's coming in next month, next year, or in the next 20 years that might have a project that could use the LGC is an entity to facilitate that, as opposed to working with some other entity available. Texas has dozens of specialty districts and corporations like this with different particular powers and purposes. This is just one that cities can use, and counties and navigation districts can use to accomplish those objectives.
So it's just not economic development. It talks about workforce training and all these other things too. So it's kind of, it leaves us kind of a broad spectrum of things to do. Is that correct?
And LGC does have fairly broad powers. I'd have to, normally when somebody asks if an LGC can do something, I'll look at the statute and any applicable court cases and get you an answer on it. They're fairly flexible, yes.
And I don't have it offhand, but you referenced two different statutes that this LGC is formed under, right?
Yeah, the LGC is formed under a specific set of chapter in state law, correct?
Okay. I don't know how we vote on it. I mean, I think we'd have to change the, I think we'd have to change, if y'all want to vote on this, and that's fine, I don't want to keep on voting. I would just say that you would need to say something about that we recommend. Because if we have to have our entity's approval, that we agree with the to recommend or however.
The idea for this agenda item was simply to start the process moving forward, which will ultimately involve talking to all three or four governmental entities and coming up with a way forward that everybody agrees upon. This is step one of a multi-step process, but the bylaws would not be amended by this motion. That's correct.
Okay. That being answered, looking for,
I need a motion, so.
Yeah,
we like that motion. No?
no, we have that
All
motion.
right, motion.
We need a motion to pursue B. Yeah, to pursue B and take subsequent action with each entity or discussion with each entity and amend the bylaws.
Made and seconded, Commissioner Mayor Cullen.
So this one has to be, is just to amend the bylaws as to not having quarterly meetings, but only having annual meetings for the particular motion that's on the floor currently.
Right.
Subject to all four entities' approval.
The motion is to bring it to the subscribing entity to ask for that amendment.
That's correct.
That's great. All those for? Aye. Against? Try.
Oh, I'm a yes. Yes, sir.
Item number 4.
That's my agenda. I'm trying to pull that, please. The agenda.
Strike that. That's item 5. Discuss and deliberate. The need for participating governmental entities to invoice the Kansas County Alliance Local Government Corporation for administrative services.
So that's my agenda item, and I just, I know that the county right now is borne the burden of paying for the LGC, the financing. You're meeting our requirement for video, like, putting over the internet. Your secretary is the one who's doing the agenda, and I think that's great. And I think everybody's done a good job, but we're a private corporation, and you are giving us services for free. And if you're giving us services for free, I don't know if you can do it for an in-kind donation or what, but there needs to be some sort of accounting of these services and the fact that the county is doing it for us.
Mr. Bell, you're an attorney. Can you give us some legal advice on that?
Oh, is that a question for me? I'm sorry. The LGC is not a private corporation. It's actually a governmental corporation. And with the interlocal agreement among the city, the county, and the other subscribers to that agreement, everyone agreed to work cooperatively with their shared authority in their local agreement to do this. So if the county is providing support services right now, that's just pursuant to the interlocal agreement.
Okay.
just discussion, there's no action.
Yes, sir.
Item number 6, discuss and deliberate Aransas County Alliance Local Government Corporation current contract with the economic system. Discuss and deliberate entering into negotiations with the Aransas County Independent School District to join the Aransas County Alliance Local Government Corporation to participate in governmental entities.
So that's mine. I've talked to school board members who are interested in the idea of, they're sold on the idea of the one voice and working together. And they've expressed interest in possibly joining the LGC as an organization to come together to do, as Mr. Bell says, like work statutorily with the statutes. And the idea would be that we just start a discussion with them and find out. I know there's a buy-in in the group. Ours is 2,500 and y'all's is more. That one of the things that we were formed to do, and it was talked about a lot, is the need for workforce training in our community. The school district is the biggest driver of workforce training in our school district. The Del Mar program cannot survive without working together with the school. The numbers just don't match up. So there needs to be that working together. And there is times when I believe we should come together and talk about policies. For instance, the TIF that for downtown Rockport, it talks about that enacting these policies may displace people. This is for the TIF downtown, the reinvestment down downtown.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right. But I'm saying these,
Topic, right?
okay, the economic policies that we're enacting or that we're talking about as an LGC, they have a downstream effect of affecting the school a lot. For instance, when we talk about the type of housing that we're looking at, and we talk about 51 or more low income, the numbers out of the Brookings Institute tells us that, and that's a liberal think tank, they say that the majority of people who live in low income housing are 38-year-old, minority female, 2 children, and it's an income of $18,000. Now that is going to have a significant impact on our schools. And if we're pursuing policies like this as a group, we need to at least have the school district involved in those policies because they're going to have to move. So
if this is all really muted after December 31st, I mean, let's leave.
And the school district had been invited
And
originally.
they declined.
there was a different leadership at the time too.
Mr. Bell.
The reason the school district was not one of the original parties is because under the law that creates local government corporations, the school district cannot be a sponsor. Now, the LGC can have contracts with the school district to provide, cooperation and address the issue that you're addressing. I agree that in providing workforce training, school district can be a very key player in that process. But so far as being one of the sponsors of the LGC, the LGC law allows sponsors to be a city, a county, a navigation district, a transit authority. But those are the only types of entities. School districts are not allowed to be sponsors of the LGC.
why was the LGC originally presented to the school district?
I'm not quite sure. I wasn't involved in that presentation.
the LGC for participation was originally presented to the school district. And they did, they turned down participation at the time. But they were asked to join the LGC.
I don't have any, yeah, I wasn't involved at that process, no.
Okay, so if they couldn't have done it then, that's good that they rejected it.
All I'm telling you is what the law
My-
says right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
If the attorney for the school district has a different approach that might enable them to do that, that's the school district's call. I don't want to profess to
no, sir,
advise
it
them.
was presented to the school district when it was originally presented to the different entities, and they rejected it, so,
All
thank you,
right,
sir, appreciate it.
all right, item 7, discuss and deliberate the Aransas County Alliance Local Government Corporation current contract for economic development services with Aransas County Partnership Economic Development Corporation.
This is from me, this is me, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible, if we're looking at, what is this, May, we're looking at 7 months, that you guys are still gonna have this contract with us? Out of that time, could we get some special treatment? And you guys look at Cove Harbor and look at these things and spend some time with our harbor master and our commissioners, seeing how we can maybe get some things going on in the next 7 months.
When you say special treatment, you mean to the LGC or to the NAB district?
I'm talking about EDC, I mean special treatment as in just like, could you spend some time with our harbor master, Keith Barrett? And could you also make it a point to make a presentation to this presentation to the commissioners?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
We send out these quarterly reports that were available.
Right.
In fact, your harbor master has been invited to every single board meeting that the EDC has had. He's a member.
Right, yes, sir.
So, yeah, we're available.
I know. My original, the original purpose of the agenda item was to discuss metrics and to kind of have it where you guys would come and actually speak with us and we kind of set some priorities ourselves, but yeah, yes.
I recently made a request to them for marketing dollars to help market the district's assets, and we were turned down. So it wasn't needed. So we are reaching out.
Who did you discuss that with? Ollie Moore?
Yes, sir, Mr. Moore, it was the harbor master.
Harbor Master. Thank you.
All right, reports from announcements from any directors. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made, second, all those in favor?